Hello everybody, it's diecast, and in this video something a little different. I got over the last few months I've gotten some emails about people asking about the customs that I do, and I haven't really covered the customs much in the videos, partially because there's always just one custom done at a time. And a lot of times the customs get shipped out or sold before I ever do a video on them. So they kind of come and go pretty quickly. And sometimes I'm working on things that I'm not really supposed to be sharing, projects for companies or parties or something like that. And as far as non-disclosure goes, sometimes I can't talk about it. But I do have a bunch of customs, and they've been sitting on my shelf upstairs. The ones that I keep and kind of my favorite ones are the ones that are in progress. And I thought I'd answer some questions about them just because, well, I got some questions. And it's just way easier to do a video on them than to type all that up. So the first question I got is if I use masks on my customs. And a lot of you know that I actually make masks, and boy, that would just be brilliant if I had them down here right now, and I don't. Wow. Oh, here we go. Well, look at that. We got them. We got some right here. This is not planned, actually. But I do have masks. I make my own masks, and look, we even have a little label. I do make my own masks, and so I do obviously use masks with the customs, and the masks I use are vinyl masks, so they're basically airbrush masks. It's the same type of masking that you would use on a... Okay, sorry about that. My camera roll was full. I needed to clear it out. But yeah, I do use these masks. They're the same ones that are used with automotive airbrush paint, or automotive shops would use vinyl masks for certain things. It's similar to what we would use with 2D art, like graphic art, but the vinyl that I use is a lot more pliable and flexible, and then I use a plotter to cut out my own designs. And my background's in digital art, so I just make my own designs. And sometimes I take pictures of real cars and kind of riff off those designs, and sometimes I just do doodles and see if it works. And a lot of times the designs don't work at all, and so my computer is filled with failed designs. Some of them actually work. So here's a popular one. This is probably the most popular one that we sell. Real easy to apply, and you can tell. Yeah, let's find one since we've got this going. I think, yeah, here you go. Nope, not the same one. Here it is. This car, that car there, has that design, except it's, yeah, that's it. Same design. And on the side, that design is that design right there. So, yes, I do use masks. I guess the next question was if I hand paint any of it. And it's kind of relative. I don't hand paint the entire design. I think that's what the question probably was. And I just am not very good at that. My eyes aren't good enough to focus that small. So when I'm painting, I'm usually using a magnifying glass, or applying tampo or decals, or doing anything with the cars. I'm usually using a magnifying glass. But I've tried hand painting on the side of cars, and I would love to be able to do that. I just can't get the results that I like. And I don't have an example here of one that I have hand painted, but I'm just not very good at it. Now, that said, I do a lot of touch-up, and none of the decals or masks that I use are totally 100% perfect. Sometimes stuff happens. A lot of times I just chip the paint because I'm not particularly careful. I'm not a real delicate person when I'm working on these things, so I drop them, or I'm always touching things up. And so I do use a lot of brushes and a lot of paints for touching up stuff. The next question was if I do, when I do the tampos like this one, and This one was actually made for Shad Juice, and he has one in his collection. I have one in my collection. I think mine has different wheels on it, if I remember right. There's only 2 of these. And I don't do full car body wraps, meaning it's one great big decal that wraps around the car. I do it in pieces, but it also depends on the design. So something like that versus, you know, the Green Bay Packer, this dairy, this whole side is a decal. This is all a decal. And this is a decal on this one. But if we look at, say, where's a good example here? Well, this one. This one was just in Mr. Sensitivity's contest. This one has airbrushed flames, which if I tilt it, you'll see, and they kind of change with the light because it's a candy coat paint on it. And then the 2.7 that's on top of it is a 2-step paint process. So basically I cut out a mask that is the shape of the 2 and the 7 plus the shadow. And then I cut out a clear water slide decal of just the shadow and lay it over the top, if that makes sense. I know that makes sense to the guys that probably have been doing this a long time, but if you're just starting, you might be like, huh, what? For this decal back here is not printed in white. That's a mask, and then I spray it in white. I don't have a printer that prints in white. I do buy decals that are printed in white, and I use them quite often. But something like this decal, that is a water slide white decal that's just cut as a band. And I'll be right back. This one here that I'm working on, those decals are actually printed in white. So this one's not done yet, but you can see those decals there are printed in white. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and what I like to do is just try lots of different ones, and you know, actually seeing all these in the picture together kind of shows that off. I just kind of make up the concept that I want in my head, and then I figure out how to make it. So I don't like to fall back on making all my cars the same. I like to use different castings. I kind of go through phases. So I mean, we do a lot of these little kind of marketing customs, like this one for Wolfie Donuts, and because that pays the bills. So, you know, anything from car dealerships to restaurants, they have yearly parties or something. They want to give something away to their employees. So sometimes I'll get called to do those. And those batches could be anything from like 5 cars to 100 cars. And so sometimes I do big chunks of lots of these things all at once. Take a look at something like this. This was one of the first customs that I did. And as far as the customs go, it's not anything special. But this one uses some stuff you can buy right over the counter. In fact, if you're new to customizing, there's nothing in this one you couldn't do yourself. This little 53 number, that's just a pine car press on, basically. It's a decal, but you rub it on. And it's for pine car racers, and they have that at any Hobby Lobby or probably any hobby store in any town. Boy Scouts do pine racers, and so they like to decorate them. There's kind of a whole mini industry on decorating pine racer cars, and that's just one of the products I got early on in customizing. This the stripes, if you have trouble painting stripes, that is, and if I get the light right, you'll see those stripes are kind of raised. That's just pinstripe masking, and it's actually for model airplanes. It's by is the company Tomica? I think it's Tomica, It's their version of pinstripe masking. I think they call it something like airplane striping or something, but it just sits on top. It's a sticker. I don't use those anymore. That one's really early on. Something like this one, which this is, like I said, I don't do understated. I didn't get into this hobby to do understated anything, and that's just not my style. I don't really like the colors on this one, but I like to use it as a demonstration because the wheels, and they're a little dirty here. They've been sitting on my shelf. But the wheels on this are bigger than what would normally fit in here. So the whole inside of this has been grinded out to get those wheels to fit. Same with the front. And the tampos on there, this is paint. This is paint that's been masked. This is a white backed decal. That's a white backed decal. This is actually written on in Sharpie marker, and this is a clear decal right there. So I use this just to show all the different types of techniques. And I got that curved shape there. That's one of the masks that we sell in the store. Another question I got is, do I ever combine castings together? In other words, like chop them up and glue them together? I do. It's not something I do a lot of. And usually it's kind of something that gets forced on me. Like I said, I'm not delicate in the shop, and I break stuff a lot. And so I'm getting a piece ready to show you here. I break stuff a lot. Now I have a lot of extra cars laying around, so usually I can get an extra piece. But sometimes I break a piece that's just I don't have another piece of, so I have to cobble something together. This is a good example. This is the outside of this casting is just a regular Torino casting. It's the same as this one. So same casting. Same exact casting, Torino. But this one, and I'm not going to get a good shot of it here with the camera. This one has a muscle machine interior. And you can see the roll bars there. But the entire interior is from a muscle machine. And muscle machines are usually a little bit larger in scale. They're a little bit more exaggerated. So what I did was I chopped up all those parts, and a lot of them are kind of glued on, so that it's really easy to take the muscle machine pieces apart, like the roll cage, and I just lowered it. I just chopped them all up with my Dremel saw, and I just basically cobbled it back together so it would fit in there. And it took about an hour of shaving, and you'll see the bottom is not pretty. It's really kind of chewed up because it's been shaved and chopped and glued. But what I wanted to show you was back here. See that seam right there? It's not a pretty seam. Can't see it from up above. All I've done is I've used some masking. Again, it's that thin pinstripe masking tape, so it's black. And I don't know if it's going to show up. Let me see if I can I don't want to pull this out because I really jammed it. Nah, I can't pull that out without breaking it. But I've just seamed it together. It's just glued together. And the back of that is the same as the back of this. See if I can get the light right. Half of it is the back of this right there. And half of it, the front half, is the muscle machines where you see the speakers. It's all just cobbled together. Smoke and mirrors. It's a nice thing about doing stuff that's so small is you can do a lot of stuff. Also, getting back to whether I cobble stuff together, this is just a combi, but I haven't cobbled anything together on it, but I've sanded off all the details. And I got this idea actually off a real car that just enthralled me when I looked at it. I took all sorts of pictures of it, but I just love the simplicity of it. So I wanted to do that in a Hot Wheels, and I got that little combi. It's one of my favorites. It rolls too. It rolls just fine. Brings up another question that came up, and I'm kind of rambling because there's a lot of questions. But one of them was, do I think the wheels need to roll on a custom? Well, again, that's relative. If I'm just doing the custom because of I want to copy a car I saw, or I have an idea or a concept I want to do, I don't really care if the wheels roll. I try to get them to roll, but sometimes stuff just happens and I just don't want to tear the car up or replace axles that might be glued in place, or I use copper piping sometimes to hold the axles in place. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I use original wheels, but I change the outside so the wheels rub. It just depends. Just a random car. Oh, these wheels came with that one. That's cheating. Let's use, here you go. I know these wheels are, did not come with this car. These wheels roll just fine. But something like this one, this is another one of my early ones. Oh, those wheels roll pretty good too. There we go. I knew one of these didn't. One of these Cudas didn't. The wheels on the back of this one, it's real tight fit in there with that thick of a wheel. And I really wanted thick wheels on this. Now, I could grind out the bottom of, or the inside of this, because where it's rubbing is just a tiny little piece. And they will turn, but it's really tight. They're not glued in place. They will turn, but they're tight. The front turns just fine. But the risk of dremeling that out and slipping and scratching the paint, even if I scratch the paint a tiny bit, in some cases, if I mix that color or those paints are layered, I really can't fix it. And if it's a bad scratch, then I lose the whole casting. So sometimes I just decide to leave the wheels rubbing because I don't want to risk it. If it's just going to be sitting on my shelf for me to look at, oh, here's one. I'm bumping into it. Here's a good example. Those wheels back there are really tight, which is actually a real issue with these Corvettes. They have a very tight wheel well for large wheels. It's a real world issue. They turn okay, but they're a little tight. I'm not going to Dremel that out and risk wrecking the paint job on it. So another question was, do I prefer Matchbox or Hot Wheels? And the truth is, I don't really care. I have certain cars I really like AAR Cudas, Torinos, Power Panels, believe it or not, just because they've got great big sides and they're kind of a mix between a truck and a SUV. So they're good for a lot of clients that don't really care. Dairy deliveries. I think this is called Street Beast. This is one of my favorites, even though it's not really a real car, just because it's big and easy to work with. I don't really care. I don't think I have any Matchbox cars out here. Oh yeah, I do. This is a Matchbox car. We've done a couple of these, but I don't really care. I just kind of come up with ideas and then I just fit it to a casting. I kind of stock up on like gassers and Torinos and combis because those are popular and they're easy to work with. But no, not really a favorite. And I use all sorts of other cars. I mean, just here in the workshop, there's tons of, everything from muscle machines to, I think this is a Dub City, maybe not, I don't know. But at car shows, I just buy them up. Anything that's got parts that I can use on them. And I'm just grabbing these out of a junk bin over here. And these are just cars that get chopped up. So for anything, like here's a motorcycle, we'll use those wheels for something. So no, not usually. Last question was, what was my favorite custom that I did? And it's kind of hard to answer because some of them I really liked I did for other people, and so those were sold. I have pictures of them, but we got plenty here to choose from. Out of all these, I think my favorite one, and I've mentioned this before, is probably this little Cuda, this AAR Cuda, and there's nothing special about it. It really is not probably one of my top 5 that I've done, I don't think. And it's got issues, so if you're a real pro and you're looking at that and you can tell what the issues are, I'm not going to point them out. It does. Sorry, this was the first one I did that I really felt like came out the way I wanted it to, and everything was kind of downhill since then. So that'll do it for a little custom chat. This was kind of off the cuff. So I hope it answered some questions. I get a lot of questions about the customs, and I've kind of not dealt with it too much because, well, that's just kind of a separate thing. We are launching a site. Well, we have a site, but we're moving it over to a website. It is working. There is a video coming. And I think what we'll do at that point is I'll really get more into the customs once I introduce the site to you. Okay, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.